Welcome to the world today. I am Amarachi Ubani. So Burkina Faso's capital, Ouagadougou, is literally in chaos as angry protesters stormed the parliament building today, setting that building ablaze. Reports say the city hall and ruling party headquarters are also in flames. At least 5 people have died in the violence. Now, despite all of this, a huge crowd is surging towards the presidential palace and the main airport has been shut. The protesters are angry and plans to allow the country's president, Blaise Compaore, to extend his 27-year rule, while members of parliament have now suspended a vote on constitutional amendment.
Thousands of protesters marched through Burkina Faso's capital to denounce President Blaise Compaore's plan to seek re-election. Mainly organized by the labor unions, the demonstrators take aim at Compaore's bid to amend the constitution so he can stay in power. They are also demonstrating against the high cost of living and privatization of schools. Political wranglings in Burkina Faso are being closely watched across West Africa, where a number of leaders are due to step aside soon, including in Benin Republic, where thousands protested on Wednesday over a delay in elections. President Compaore came to power in a coup in 1987 and subsequently won 4 presidential elections. He had been expected to stand down next year when his mandate expires, but the planned constitutional changes will allow him to run for a new term. The U.S. State Department has said it is concerned by the spirit and intent behind the proposed amendment. Burkina Faso is a key U.S. ally in West Africa in the fight against Al-Qaeda-linked fighters operating in the Sahel-Sahara Band. It also frequently mediates in regional conflicts.
Well, there have been reactions to the situation in Burkina Faso today. France has condemned the violence and called for calm. In an online briefing, the French Foreign Minister said, "We deplore the violence that has taken place in and around the National Assembly. We call for a return to calm and ask all parties to show restraint." A Burkina Faso government spokesperson has also said the government has dropped its plans to extend the 27-year rule of President Blaise Compaore. Compaore is a key ally of former colonial power France, which has thousands of troops fighting Al-Qaeda-linked Islamists in the region, as well as about 3,600 of its nationals in Burkina Faso. France also operates a special forces base in Burkina Faso that regularly launches operations in the Sahel-Sahara region. Let's talk more on this now. The VOA's Anne Luke joins me now from Dakar, Senegal. Anne, great to see you. Thanks for joining us on The World Today. So the protesters have been moving towards the presidential palace and most likely the main airport. Any idea what the intentions are when they get there?
You know, what the protesters were telling my correspondent on the ground in Ouagadougou is they want President Compaore to leave. They want him to leave power. We're still waiting to hear a statement from military command about the latest on the situation. There have been rumors of a coup, rumors that the president could be negotiating some kind of step down from power. Lots of options on the table, and it's still pretty confused on the ground.
So this might likely be what we could refer to as the Africa Spring, because it's not usual that we see Africans protesting against sitting governments. There are other leaders who have sat in government for more than 20 years. What's so peculiar about the situation in Burkina Faso?
Yeah, I think just that everyone's a bit surprised to see the force with which the people have taken to the streets. But keep in mind, we saw something similar in Senegal just 2 years ago when President Wade tried to change the constitution to stay in power and run for a 3rd term. You know, we've seen this play out in different ways, different countries in the region. In Niger in 2010, we saw President Macky Tandja try to do this. and get toppled by a coup. So, I think that we're just seeing the Burkina Faso political opposition rise up, their labor unions, their general young youth rise up and demand that they be heard on this.
Any word on the constitutional amendment that's been suspended? We understand the parliamentarians have suspended, Parliament has suspended a vote on the constitutional amendment. That was supposed to allow the president run for another term next year. Any word on that? Any further developments?
Well, the parliament was kind of forced to suspend the vote when protesters stormed the parliament building and started burning things. The government then announced that it was withdrawing the proposed constitutional amendment. Keep in mind, that amendment was proposed by the government, not by the parliament.
So, and just before you go, President Blaise Compaore had been the only candidate that we knew would be running for office next year. I mean, the strongest candidate, I should say. What are the other contestants, the other political candidates for the elections next year? Do they have any say in what's going on? Have they said anything concerning the protests going on in the city or concerning the constitutional amendment?
Yeah, the country's opposition leaders did say that they declared civil disobedience. They said they were going to continue to protest to keep this constitutional amendment from going forward. Now, just today, we've seen some of them making announcements, tweeting. They're also calling on President Compaore to step down, though they're stopping short of backing any kind of forceful removal from power, any kind of military coup. It's a bit early to say who would be key contenders in a vote this time next year. But you could say that in previous elections, voter turnout has been very low. President Compaore has reportedly won high percentages of votes. So even if he does plan to run in an election next year, you could look at this mobilization we're seeing on the streets as saying perhaps this is the beginning, of a new era in terms of political mobilization or social mobilization in Burkina.
And thank you so much for your thoughts on this issue. Anne Look is with the VOA. She's at the office in Dakar, Senegal. Let's turn to Tunisia now, where secularist party Nida Tune has gained the majority of seats in the nation's parliament. It won 85 in Sunday's elections, while the governing Islamist Ennahda party won 69 seats in the 217 seats chamber. And official results confirm earlier predictions, and the Ennahda officials have already urged Nida Tune to form an inclusive government.
Results released by Tunisia's electoral authorities show the country's main secular party, Nida Tunis, has won 85 seats in the new 217-member parliament, while the Islamist party Ennahda secured 69 seats. On Sunday, Tunisians voted in a parliamentary election that was one of the last steps in the North African country's transition to democracy after the 2011 uprising against Zine al-Abidine Ben Ali. Ennahda, the first Islamic movement to secure power after the Arab Spring revolts, conceded defeat on Monday in the election that was only the second free vote since Ben Ali's autocratic rule ended. One of the most secular Arab countries, Tunisia has been hailed for an example of political compromise after overcoming a crisis between secular and Islamist movements and approving a new constitution this year that allowed the elections. With no outright majority, Nida Tunis will seek to form a coalition with partners in negotiations that will likely last weeks before a new government is set up. Ennahda has called for a national unity government, including its Islamist movement.
The United Kingdom Court of Appeal has ruled that a Libyan man can sue the UK government over what he calls him being illegally sent back to Libya and being tortured. Abdul Hakim Belhaj alleges that former Foreign Secretary Jack Straw and MI6 partnered in arranging his and his wife's rendition from China in 2004. The High Court had earlier ruled that the case could not be heard in the UK courts because it could damage foreign relationships. But appeal judges said that claims were so grave a court should hear them. Mr. Belhaj, now a politician in Libya, says he is, however, delighted that he and his wife would have his day in court. The Foreign Office said it was considering whether to make an application. The case would not be heard until after any appeal. When we come back after the break on The World Today, President Goodluck Jonathan picks his nomination form, the only one in the People's Democratic Party. Please join us again for details and the analysis.